Welcome to today's ITJ's podcast, in which we will discuss Ibn Khaldun's economic thought. Many secondary works rely on a single English translation of Al-Mukarramawai. Is this a concern for understanding his philosophy accurately?
Great question. Relying on just one translation, particularly Rosenthal's 1958 version, introduces significant interpretive bias. Each translation reflects the translator's linguistic, cultural, and even political positions. For example, Rosenthal's reading of key terms like kasb and tijara often imposes Western economic frameworks, which can distort Ibn Khaldun's original intent.
So, would you say translation is more than a mechanical process? What are the risks when secondary scholarship depends on a single version?
Absolutely. Translation is inherently interpretive choices around word meanings, especially in technical Maghribi Arabic, can either clarify or obscure the text. When secondary scholars build on one translation, their critiques and conclusions often echo each other, lacking the nuance and diversity you'd get from engaging multiple primary sources or translations.
That really highlights the ripple effect of translation choices. As we transition, let's examine how these translation issues shape debates about Ibn Khaldun's originality and impact. Some Western scholars have argued that Ibn Khaldun's ideas aren't truly original, often comparing him unfavorably to Renaissance or Enlightenment figures. What's your take on these assessments?
This critique often stems from an anachronistic standard of originality rooted in modern Western academia. For instance, Spengler and others have claimed Ibn Khaldun merely compiled bits and details. Yet, this overlooks his systemic approach to history, society, and economics elements that predate and arguably anticipate later Western theories.
Could you give an example where Western readings misinterpret his theoretical contributions due to cultural biases or translation gaps?
Certainly. Take his cyclical theory of civilization. Many Western interpreters collapse his nuanced distinctions between umran, urbanization, and hapatara, civilization, into a single concept, missing his layered analysis. Moreover, Western focus on individual genius underestimates the cumulative, systems-based knowledge tradition that Ibn Khaldun himself valued.
Fascinating. Let's now turn to Ibn Khaldun's own economic philosophy, especially his theory of work as the core store of value. Ibn Khaldun's assertion that work not money is the essential store of value challenges both medieval and modern economic thinking. Could you unpack this idea for our audience?
Of course. Ibn Khaldun viewed work, or shina'a, as foundational. He argued that all wealth derives from human labor, not merely from the accumulation of money or gold. In his framework, even natural resources only become valuable through human effort processing grain into flour, for example, or tailoring fabric into clothing.
That's a strikingly modern perspective, reminiscent of later labor theories of value. How does he distinguish between types of work and their social implications?
He differentiates between risk subsistence work necessary for survival and kasb-earned income above basic needs. What's fascinating is that Ibn Khaldun extends the definition of work to include not just artisans and farmers, but also tax collectors or state officials. He even argues the state must ensure a baseline subsistence for all, foreshadowing welfare concepts.
So, for Ibn Khaldun, work is both a social and ethical measure. Let's transition to how this links to his broader systems thinking and the rise and fall of civilizations. Your last point leads directly to Ibn Khaldun's systems approach. Can you explain how he connects work, urbanization, and the state in the making and unmaking of civilizations?
Ibn Khaldun conceptualizes civilization as the outcome of three interdependent systems: enduring urban centers, a diversified workforce, and a strong state. Urbanization, or umran, creates the density needed for economic specialization, while the state secures and organizes these processes. When these systems are in balance, societies thrive. When excess or corruption creeps in, decline is inevitable.
It's almost like he's describing a feedback loop where economic and social systems reinforce or undermine each other. How does this model help us understand historical or even contemporary societies?
Exactly. Think of it as an early precursor to modern systems theory. For example, Ibn Khaldun predicted that as civilizations reach their peak, increased state expenditure leads to higher taxes and inflation, which, in turn, erodes social cohesion and accelerates decline. This cyclical dynamic can be observed in both medieval dynasties and modern states.
That brings us to a crucial, often overlooked aspect: how Ibn Khaldun links economic activity to the formation of ethics and conscience. One truly original insight in Ibn Khaldun's work is his claim that a person's profession shapes their conscience and ethics. How does he justify this, and what are the broader implications?
Ibn Khaldun posits that one's ethical disposition is molded by their work habits and social environment. For instance, he argues that traders, due to constant bargaining and competition, may develop traits like cunning or opportunism, while craftsmen foster discipline and patience. This is more than a stereotype. It's a proto-psychological theory rooted in economic life.
Does he see this as a universal pattern, or does he make moral judgments about certain professions?
He goes further, ranking professions by their ethical impact. For example, he claims merchant ethics are below those of nobles or kings, as the means of making a living imprint specific values on a person. Intriguingly, he connects exploitative practices like monopoly to spiritual consequences, suggesting ill-gotten gains can haunt the soul and even undermine wealth.
That's a powerful systems view, connecting economic roles, moral character, and societal outcomes.